Oh, thumbs up. I got to look at you if I want to see that thumbs up. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Senate Travel, Recreation and Wildlife, and appreciate everyone being here, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to go. So Senator Dockstader is here, my desk mate. And Senator, you've got a couple of bills for us. Just by way of housekeeping, and first of all, let's take a roll, and then I want to talk about how we're going to handle these bills. So,
Senator Boner,
excused.
Senator Hicks.
Here.
Senator Jones.
Here.
Senator Schuler.
Here.
Chairman Landon.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. So, Senator, I think when we get to public testimony, I'm going to allow for folks to testify on both bills at once. These are interrelated. As Sue pointed out this morning, we have a couple of sister bills. They're sister bills. So when we get to those folks who are good enough to stream in and be listening in, please, if you want to, we'll certainly hear on both bills. So, Senator Dockstader, Senate File 139, do you want to walk us in and out of the bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for taking the time to hear these. I'll give you a little preface before we step into these. We had a situation, you'll hear, we had a situation out west where we lost a family dog to a trap. And the question came up, where are the setbacks? Where do people really understand trapping? And why are we seeing this? It's because it's not necessarily Old West. We're not settling the West anymore. People are moving here in great numbers. And as we know through those outdoor recreation numbers, they're expanding greatly. People love the outdoors. When they go outdoors, they take their pet with them. I take my pet, a golden retriever named Cheyenne, and we walk those canyons out west. And we're seeing where maybe we need to make some adjustments. I know Wyoming is very much hunting, fishing, trapping, all of that, but maybe a few adjustments so that we can make sure at least the family pets are kept safe as we transition into some of the things that are happening in our state. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I bring you Senate File 139, Trapping Requirement Licenses, Season Setbacks. Mr. Chairman, committee, I'm going to walk through this rather quickly because there are people here that have done a lot of windshield time to come out to the east side of the state to talk to you. So we'll go through the bills and then leave some time, I hope, for the public testimony. 139 promulgates the rules, establishes the trap setbacks. Commission is allowed to work with the Game and Fish to promulgate these rules and the setbacks on page 2. And then the traps are identified on page 2, calling for 30-foot setbacks and 72-hour checks in some cases. Another check coordinated with the Game and Fish as well. The key part of this comes towards the end, Mr. Chairman, committee, that allows the Game and Fish Commission to promulgate all the rules, to implement all the provisions. And through all of this, we call upon coordination with the Game and Fish and whomever they would also like to coordinate with as well. So with that, I bring you Senate File 139, and I'll keep it brief and move on to the next one at your pleasure, Mr. Chairman. But any questions at this point, sir?
So, Senator Dockstader, what's the repealer 232303B? I didn't have time to look that up this morning.
I've got to go back and look too.
Okay. We can get to that in a little bit. Maybe the department knows. We'll, any questions, committee of the sponsor? Go ahead, Senator Schuler.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, while you guys are having a chance to look that up, I just had a question on what are still-jawed leg hold traps, the ones that apparently have to be checked at least once every 72 hours. What kind of traps are those? Are those like for bear, or are they huge? Or I guess I don't know enough about
The ones,
what traps look like.
what little I know about this, these are the smaller ones for smaller animals. Yeah,
Okay.
that's kind of our focus here, Mr. Chairman. Senator Schuler, that we're looking for these situations where they're a little close to the trail with these traps, and it's just we got a mix up of what's the wild animal and what's the domestic, because the traps are set with fresh bait, and that's our dogs will go after that, Mr. Chairman.
And just to follow up.
Go ahead, Senator Schuler.
And then they all have to be equipped with a breakaway device. And again, I don't know enough about trapping, so what would that look like?
Mr. Chairman,
You bet.
Senator, I'm going to let the people behind me explain what that breakaway device is. Thank you.
It's long after my time from running a little trap line over in Daniel, Wyoming. I'll
Mr.
tell you
Chairman, in
that.
your Sublette County days.
I don't know these either, but we're gonna learn something. Anything else for the bringer of the bill? Tell you what, Senator, let's go ahead and look at the second one.
Okay.
And then we'll bring everybody up to talk about both these bills.
Mr. Chairman, the concept is, I'm going to go through these rather quickly to allow those from our agency and those who have traveled to testify. Bring U-140 trapping education requirements, line for education for our younger trappers who haven't been involved with this for years, don't have the experience. Dates noted on page 2. And then they need to apply for a certificate. They can make application on page 2. And then calls for a mentor as well on page 2. The commission shall promulgate the rules. Another key part. We're setting this up for the Game and Fish Commission and our agency to work this out. And then also, everything's at the discretion of the Game and Fish on page 3. We acknowledge the existing statutes on page 4, and again, promulgate those rules. And I come back to, Mr. Chairman, to what I said in the very beginning when we were working on this and our situation. I contacted the Game and Fish and I said, this is probably something we can do with rules and regs. Can you just set up these rules, working with the commission, working with the agency working together and set up the rules and regs? And they emphasized that in order to do this, it'd be better to have legislation in place, allowing and directing them to do that. And so that's why we're here today, Mr. Chairman and committee.
So Senator Dockstader, this kind of, we do this fairly often down here. Sometimes we need expectations to be set. Kind of like we dealt with a school district here a couple of days ago that needed a little bit of help on an issue and came down here with it. So did I kind of have that right?
Exactly right. We have the experts sitting behind me today.
Yeah. Anything else for the bringer of the two bills? Senator, I hope you can stay with us because we may have some questions along the way and
Mr. Chairman, I'll
want your
clear the
input at
tables
the
so
end.
they
So
can come up.
let's ask the department to come forward. Good to see you guys here this morning. Director, how are you?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I am good. Good morning, Senators. Angie Bruce, Director of Game and Fish. With me today is Craig Smith. He's Deputy Chief of Wildlife Division. So if it pleases the committee, I'd give just a brief history before just reviewing the impacts of the two bills to the department. Back in 2020, we really started this conversation because our commission asked the department to bring together stakeholders to get input from folks across Wyoming regarding trapping-related matters and any possible recommendations to the commission for changes. So we did a very aggressive effort. It involved forming a stakeholder committee, on top of reaching out to over 300 different stakeholders to get some feedback. In addition, holding public meetings across the state. All of that done in 2020. With that, we brought back 14 recommendations to our commission. Wide variety of things. I won't go over all of those. I'll give you one example. One of the recommendations that came out of the group and through all the input was to have a single page on our department website of all things trapping. So one-stop shop for all information to go to. So a lot of different recommendations came through for that. But two of the ones are those two bills in front of you today. And so our commission recommended the department look into these and consider getting the statutory authority to do what these two bills do. So with that, I will turn my thoughts over to the bills now.
Absolutely.
So the first one, Senate File 139 with the setback requirements, just as the sponsor described, this is a pretty simple change in the statute to allow the commission to include specifications for setbacks. The commission would go through its AP public process in order to do that, to set rules and regulations and gather input again, come with a proposal of what those setbacks would look like. And then the commission would go through its normal process and have a voting on those setbacks. And with that, I think I'll pause. I'll turn it over to Craig so he can address some of those questions that we had previous to the sponsor.
Deputy Smith, good morning. Maybe you could introduce yourself for the record and welcome.
Good morning, Chairman Landon, members of the committee. Thank you. I'm Craig Smith. As Angie said, I'm the Deputy Chief in the Wildlife Division. And if I remember correctly, I think Senator Schuler had a question concerning breakaway devices. Is that correct? Just what they are? Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Take it away.
So a breakaway device is intended to function to release at a certain pressure. And that pressure is 295 pounds of pressure in the game and fish regulations at this time. And the purpose of that is that when potentially an unintended animal enters a snare, that they could pull hard enough that it would break loose and they would not be harmed by that snare.
So Deputy Smith, tell us about this bill and are you comfortable with how things are stated and can you help us with that repealer to tell us what that repeal language is?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. As far as the bill itself, yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. That gives the commission the authority to consider the setbacks. And as the director mentioned earlier, we're certainly go through our APA process and involve a lot of affected parties in trying to determine those rules when we get to that point if this passes. And as far as the repeal of 23-2-303B, what that currently states is, at the time of application for a trapping license, the department shall determine, 1, the area in the district where the trapper may take fur-bearing animals, and 2, allowable harvests of fur-bearing animals within designated areas which may be taken in a given time. As I understand it, this is really a relic of days gone by when there was a very limited amount of trapping available, and there was a time when game wardens issued trapping licenses straight to a trapper and had to designate where they were allowed to trap at that time. Now we have rules that cover that statewide that are promulgated through the commission, and it's certainly not a practice that we use at this time.
Any questions for the Deputy Chief on this one? Senator Jones, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Deputy Director, I was wondering what type of animal is strong enough to break out of the trap that you were describing?
Go ahead, Deputy.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Jones, thank you. Typically, a deer, if a deer is caught, they are strong enough to pull loose of those. Any of larger animals that can pull hard, a mountain lion could pull loose of that. Typically, the snares are more intended for some of the predatory animals that don't have the same weight, body size, et cetera. And so that's what the intent is those animals that might find themselves there are able to release it on their own.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just some questions. I kind of wondered with your listening sessions, was there any discussion on, I know it talks about you can't put a trap or snare in 30 feet of exposed bait or carcass. It appears to me probably most of these things happen near trails where people are walking. So had you talked about that, or was there any discussion about that in terms of how far away from a trail it might be set versus has to be near, 30 feet away from a carcass or something like that?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Schuler, yes, during that public outreach, I think a lot of the discussion, nothing came out of that was concrete on what people think is a reasonable and acceptable distance from a trail. There's talk about, is 300 feet far enough? Is it not far enough? And I think that's where we're going to be at if this goes through, and we'll have to hash that out with our publics and determine what is an acceptable distance to deal with that.
So Deputy, just to clarify for the public out there and for us too, this language is already in statute. The only thing we're changing here is we're adding the word setbacks to allow our commission to take a look at setbacks, right?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Okay. So all of those, footages and poundages and the description of what kind of traps and snares, that's all in language now. So just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. So anything else, Deputy Chief, that you'd like to share on this bill? It sounds like the process of the hearing, that's usually what, about a 6-month process? Real quickly, what would you do if this bill passes? You'd set this up and go through the next 5 or 6 months with some hearings? Is that how that works?
Yes, Chairman Landon. Yeah, once this is passed, we will have to kind of backtrack from a commission meeting in the future and determine how many days we need to take this, through the public process. But it usually takes about 4 to 5 months for us to develop the draft, get it in a place where it's acceptable, take it to the public, take comment and do all of that stuff, and then have it go through the commission process. So it takes
It's just not something you do overnight, and that's another thing that I hope the public and the rest of our legislators don't understand. You can't just flick a switch. We'll have to go through some hearings and things, so.
Yes.
Director, anything else? You want to talk about the second bill, maybe?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will jump to the second bill if you guys are ready for that. So this is the Trapping Education Requirements Bill and creates a requirement for any person born after January 1st, 2000 to obtain a certificate of trapper education, and also provides for provision for trapping, a trapping mentor. So really looking at the impacts to the department, there will be some extra duties added to the department to offer this certification or this requirement of trapper education. Most likely, we plan to do this as a virtual option online. I don't believe we'll have to reinvent the wheel. There's other states that have a similar requirement. Looking at our neighbors in Montana and Idaho, we could probably look at their curriculum and modify it to fit Wyoming. There's also the International Hunter Education Association that also provides similar consistent curriculum across the nation that we could look at. But you see the fiscal note there. We are looking at an extra lift to the department to get everything in place the first year, about $35,000 and then $25,000 after that. And I only bring this up because as a new director, I'm very cognizant of additional costs and duties placed on the department. And just knowing that we don't add more staff or no more time magically appears to do these things. So it does impact what else we can do and takes away from other things. So just a point I always try to like to make with new duties. But we would go ahead and enact this pretty easily with the virtual option, and then be able to provide that customer service so that our trappers would be easily to implement it. We do have a couple friendly amendments that I'll let Deputy Chief of Wildlife go over for you as well.
Mr. Smith, do you want to walk us through a couple of amendments, you say?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Yeah, so what we've looked at here is the bill looks at providing for trapper education to be a requirement to trap wildlife. And that can cause some problems if we look at the definition of wildlife. And so what the First Amendment would be is to strike the word wildlife. And would you like me to go through by line, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, that would be really helpful.
That's the first one, and here's the second.
Thank you, Director. That'll be very helpful to hone us in so that we don't miss that when we work the bill. Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, continuing on page 1, line 3, the last word in that sentence is wildlife. Our amendment would be to strike wildlife and insert fur-bearing or predatory animals.
And really, Deputy, what this does, this amendment would just simply do that conformingly throughout the rest of the bill. We're just changing wildlife to fur-bearing or predatory animals, right?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that is correct.
Okay. Is there a second amendment that you have in mind?
Mr. Chairman, the other thing that was brought up in reviewing the bill is that a lot of research is done where animals, wildlife are live trapped. And so it seems a little bit extra to require anyone, a University of Wyoming student who's doing research with a live trap, to have the trapper education, or the Game and Fish Department also provides live traps to folks in the public and our own use to deal with conflict with wildlife and other animals. And so I think that on page 2, line 4, after snare, we would just ask that you add excluding live traps. So we would basically exclude live traps from the hunter education or the trapper education requirement. And that also is conforming.
Deputy, thank you. I would just say those live traps don't do a very good job on raccoons. You can't get them. Anyway. And page 2, line 13, committee is where that appears again. And we can take that up when we work the bill, so. Any further questions for the department this morning? Senator Jones.
Mr. Chairman, Director, I was just wondering, so is this kind of like hunter safety, but only trapper style, basically?
Yeah, Mr.
Director.
Chairman, Senator Jones, absolutely.
That hidden impact, I appreciate, Director. I think that's important at the agency level to remind us that lots of the things we do down here, we think don't cost money, but they do. So thank you for that. Any other comments from the department? If you guys can stick around, we appreciate that. We're gonna get to some comment or some testimony, and we may get a comment from you guys a little bit later. So thank you.
Yep, thank you, guys.
Okay, let's go to public testimony. Would anybody in the room like to come forward? Please, let's get started with our stock growers this morning. Morning, Mr. McGagnon.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Jim McGagnon with the Wyoming Stockgrowers Association. My comments will be limited to Senate File 139. And the current statute that's copied in this bill fundamentally deals with tools and processes for trapping of predators or fur-bearing animals. Our one concern when we add the word setbacks is that, as broadly as it's in there, at what point does that begin to interfere with private property rights? If it's on my private property and I want to set a trap in a place where I believe a predator is coming in and impacting me, that as broad as this language is, Game and Fish would have the authority to tell me I can't place a trap on my own private property. And with that in mind, would ask the committee perhaps consider adding language that would say setbacks on public or state lands, something like that, rather than having it applicable to private property. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. McGagnon. Appreciate you being here. Any questions for the stock growers this morning? I saw that just about every one of us wrote that down, and so when we take up the bill, if you can stick around today, Mr. McGagnon, we'd appreciate it, and we may come to you a little later with.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mr. Chairman, I
Council.
appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, further testimony. If anyone would like to come forward and visit with us about please come forward, and we can fill up all 3 chairs at once and come to the front row and be ready. that way we want to hear from everyone, so, and we would invite you to introduce yourselves for the record, maybe where you're from, and welcome. Where do we want to start? We'll start down at this end. That's good. It looks like
Chairman
you're ready.
Landon, my name is Donald O'Toole, and I'm from Laramie, Wyoming.
Okay, can you repeat your name again? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, and I'll try not to say it with an Irish accent. My name is Donald O'Toole.
Okay, Mr. O'Toole, please take it away. Thank you for being here.
I want to tell you my experience of a dog being caught in a trap. On Christmas Eve 2018, I got a call from a close friend who was on her way back to South Dakota to see her family for the holidays. She was extremely upset, and she'd stopped at a parking lot for the Beth Williams Tom Thorne Winter Wildlife Habitat area in Sabile Canyon. And the late Dr. Williams was a close colleague of mine and a fellow pathologist since 1978. I'd known Beth a long time. My friend let her dog out to relieve herself. The dog was a big dog, had gone about 3 feet from the car when she was caught in a leg hole trap. The dog panicked and was howling in pain. My friend was inexperienced with traps and was badly bitten by her dog, trying to get the dog out. That's not that unusual. And she was unable to free the dog. So she had to leave her dog. She drove around Sabile Canyon until she found a kind person who knew traps. So they both came back and together they freed the dog. So she had phoned me. I set up an appointment with a local veterinarian in Laramie that afternoon. The veterinarian x-rayed the dog's foot and carpus. The dog had no fractures, only bruising and soft tissue damage. Afterwards, I took my friend to the emergency room where she was treated for multiple bite wounds, mostly in her hands and arms. The traps had been set around a small car park. They were set legally, although my understanding was they were placed by the trapper's son, not by the trapper. And the trapper got his trap back. The reason I'm telling you this is, although we occasionally have dogs killed by traps, a much more common situation is where people get their dogs trapped and then they have to go through the fuss of trying to get their dogs freed and any damage to the dog or to themselves. And so I imagine this was pretty small beer for Wyoming Game and Fish and for the trapper. The dog didn't die. My friend's wounds healed. The traps were set legally. But they were set in a daft location around a car park. And reasonable setbacks established through House Bill 139 will reduce the likelihood of episodes like this. It won't stop them, but they'll reduce the likelihood. It cost my friend $400 in veterinary medical bills. She got a bunch of scars out of the deal. It disrupted a family's Christmas celebration. So it'd be good if we could prevent stuff like this, if possible, or at least reduce it. And thank you very much for your attention.
Mr. O'Toole, thank you. Appreciate you coming over the hill and visiting with us. Any questions? Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Suzanne Luer. I'm a lifelong Wyoming resident and I live in Laramie now. I'm happy to see these two bills on trapping reform. I'm grateful to Senator Dockstader and Representative Erickson for bringing them forward. I support them and I hope you will too. As a resident of Laramie, I have the good fortune to live close to the Medicine Bow National Forest. Less fortunately, however, the heavily used trails on these public lands have been the site of recurrent dog trapping incidents due to snares and traps being placed too closely to or directly on heavily used trails and other public areas. I'm aware of two incidents that occurred over the Christmas holiday this last year. One was a good friend's dog. We have an opportunity with both bills to reduce the incidents like these and ensure better separation between legally set traps and trail use by hikers, skiers, snowshoers, and others. It gives discretion to the Wyoming Game and Fish to establish reasonable setbacks that are fair to all who want to enjoy the outdoors. The population of Wyoming in 2020 was 549,914. The number of trapping licenses sold in 2019 was 2,498. This means that 0.45% of the population of our state affects the safety of everyone using public lands. So I encourage you to pass both of these bills. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Lure, thank you. Appreciate you coming today and being here. Welcome. Good morning.
Thank you, Chairman Landon and committee. I'm Sylvia Bagdonis from Laramie, and I support passage of both of these bills. I live in an area where we have an increasing number of tourists and visitors. And at the University of Wyoming, we have a lot of foreign students. We have WyoTech, which brings in people from all around the US and so forth. And with the increase in number of people, I think it is important to state that traps and trails don't mix. And I noticed that the outdoor education in Wyoming, according to a November 2024 report, contributes $2.2 billion to the Wyoming economy. It's huge. And it says that Wyoming is the fourth fastest growing outdoor recreation economy in the nation. And what I see in Laramie, and both in Beatavoo, Pole Mountain, the Snowy Range, we have increased numbers of people coming. It is so attractive now that people start coming in on Thursday. They take Friday off from work, and you cannot find a camping place or anything like that. This is a lot of people. And I have noticed, because I spend a lot of time outdoors, typically people come in, mom and dad will park the RV or put up tents, and they'll tell the kids, go run through the woods and take your dog for a walk. And they don't know they are in what I call a minefield, possibly of traps. And what I am concerned about is that someone is going to get hurt, and particularly a young kid. In some of the traps, if a child stumbles into it correctly, they can be killed or injured, really with injuries forever. So I think it is important that we look at where these traps are set, and that the people who are engaged in this activity have some education so they can also think about these things. The incidents that we have reported often are because the traps are placed in the wrong place, in a very active area, and they should not be there in the first place. And traps can be placed almost anywhere now on public lands. And while fur-bearing trapping is restricted to the winter season, October the 1st to April the 30th, trapping for predators can occur all year round. So it's an issue that happens all the time. Thank you.
Sylvia, I missed your last name.
Bagdonis.
Bagdonis. Thank you
Yes.
very much for being here.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thanks to all three of you. I'll ask for you to step back, and we'll allow others to come forward who would like to testify. And please fill up all three chairs and be ready. That way we can get through everyone this morning. We just need a green light on those microphones, and then you'll be all set. And I ask you to stay close to the microphone so folks back home can hear you, and welcome. Good
Good
morning.
morning. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee. Try and get through this.
Name.
This is Sid. If I stumble, she'll pick up. And we would just ask that if possible, once we both speak, then perhaps we could answer questions then, Mr. Chairman. And
Absolutely. If you would introduce yourselves for the record,
okay.
maybe where you're from, and relax.
I know.
You're among friends, okay?
A public
Yeah.
speaker, I am not.
Okay.
My name is Becky Barber. I am with Jester's Legacy. I am from Afton, Wyoming. I am here to speak in regards to the two bills, SF 139 and SF 140. On February 8th, 2024, I lost my best friend, Jester, just outside of Afton on national forests in a trap. Leashes are not required, although I always have my leash with me. Some people had said, well, if he'd have been on a leash, you wouldn't have been in the trap. He would have, because I would have gone right over that snowbank with him saying, what'd you get? What'd you get? Is it a squirrel? And we had seen squirrels just weeks prior to this. The kind of trap he was killed in requires a tool to release. A really strong man could probably release it, but there was no way I could. I was assured several times that he did die instantly. But when I got to Jester, his big Jester heart was still beating. As I struggled to free him and I watched the color drain from his gums, I promised him his death would not be in vain. With this trap still tied around his neck, I had no other choice but to use his leash that day to drag him down the road to meet my husband. At some point during this time, I took a picture of Jester with the trap around his neck. When I posted the picture online, I started to hear about other dogs injured or killed in traps. Jester's Legacy is an ad hoc group who supports safer trails on public lands. Jester's Legacy supporters trust my intentions because of my background. I spent my childhood years on national forests where my dad built several roads. I've worked in hunting camps, and I myself was a hunter at one time. I fought fire and I built trails on the national forests, and I have former colleagues who trap professionally. All of us are firm believers of a multiple use of public lands. So here we are today, Jester's Legacy, asking for support on these two very limited bills. Thank you for your time and giving me the chance to speak, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Ms. Barber, thank you. Thank you for making your way all the way over to Cheyenne so you could visit with us this morning. That means a lot. We appreciate it. Sid, I believe your name is. Would you like to say anything this morning?
I'll follow up a little bit. My name is Sydney Woods. I'm also from Afton, and also with Jester's Legacy. And thank you, Mr. Chairman and senators, for this opportunity to be here today and talk a little bit about some of the details as we've come to know them over the past year. First off, on Senate File 139, we have been working closely with the Game and Fish department members and at commission meetings and meeting stakeholders at meetings over the last year. And what became clear to us, we would have definitely preferred not to need legislative support for this, but what became clear to us over that time was that any potential setbacks to be effective, the legislature would need to add this particular authority to that list that is currently in the statute cited. The department has full authority for fur bearer management, but it does not have full authority for predator management except those, listed in that statute. So adding that one word is all that's required to get us moving. Because the same traps and the same sets can be used for both predator species and fur bearer species. Trying to promulgate a rule that doesn't include both is basically unenforceable and not worth doing. So that didn't occur to us at first, but it did over time. So I wanted to help you guys understand things as we slowly got to as well. I do appreciate Mr. Magagna's addition. We're definitely talking about public lands here. The trappers that Becky knows and that have been part of the Jester's Legacy conversations do mostly trap on private lands. And this isn't intended to affect private lands. So yeah, today's discussion basically is only addressing, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, the a single word in this statute. The rest of it is already part of the law and already ongoing. Like Becky, I've lived alongside and worked on public lands all my adult life in various capacities, and the multiple use philosophy is deeply ingrained. As a former mule skinner too, I'm a proponent for learning traditional backcountry skills. So like many supporters of Jester's legacy, I'm looking forward, if this bill passes, to those public meetings that Game and Fish would hold. And working with different stakeholders. The state's very different from one side to the other, so different issues and conditions apply, and we look forward to hearing what might work best that would help us get to a sort of mutually respectful path to a sensible coexistence of various recreation groups on public lands. I won't go into the sort of fiscal notes. The Director Bruce already caught those pretty well, but Senate File 140, I think, is even more straightforward than the single word in 139, because there is a currently available voluntary program and a lot of other curricula that we can find. The only thing we're asking is to make it mandatory, like hunter education. And so the people we've been hearing from, no, we haven't heard any opposition to seeing trappers also engage in a mandatory. The trap that was set that got Jester was set by a young person whose father had taught him some, but he, just young people can be sort of oblivious of other people in their neighborhood. And I'm a longtime subscriber to Wyoming Wildlife Magazine. I think learning about the animals that we're living among is more than fun, So I think the education requirement is something that most people would benefit from regardless of their age, but this is limited to just young trappers at least. And so that's just the few points I wanted to add to the discussion. I like the amendments that the department brought forward as well. That is precisely what we were trying to help them get through with you, is that difference between predatory and fur-bearing wildlife. Make sure that's all covered.
Ms. Woods, thank you. You used a phrase that I thought was wonderful, something about mutual coexistence or,
Mutually respectful coexistence.
there you go,
yeah.
mutually respectful coexistence. I've got to try to remember that, take that up on the floor. I like that. You should be down here. Thank you both, really, for making the trip over. It means a lot to us as legislators to hear from folks like you, so thank you. We're going to let you sit back. If there's no questions, I want to get to other testimony, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I would like to thank Senator Dockstader and Representative Erickson as well for
Yeah.
sponsoring these bills.
Let's not lather it up too much because I've got to live with him on my desk there, so. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Sabrina King, representing the Wyoming chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. As with most groups, the third part of our constituency is trappers. We actually do a lot of trapper education. For the most part, our membership sort of took a look at these bills, and first off, just want to say that there's a deep appreciation for not, codifying what the setbacks are, but leaving that to Game and Fish in that conversation. We think that is the appropriate way to go. So no comments on that bill. I did have a couple of comments and questions on Senate File 140. As we just heard, part of the impetus for this might be issues with younger trappers, maybe needing some education for a younger cohort. This is perhaps a question for the bringer and a question just for the drafters of the bill, but the way the bill does read is that no person on page 2, lines 2 and 3, no person born on and after January 1st, 2000, which does mean that as this is codified, we'll have people who at a certain point are 40 and have to have their trapper's license, even though they don't have that now. So if the purpose of this is to ensure that a younger cohort of trappers is getting the education they need, then it may be worth saying, you know, anyone under the age of X, Y, or Z needs to have a trapper license, rather than putting a specific date on which you were born that you need to have that. I think our members just had a question about what is the uniqueness of January 1st, 2000 to be required to do this. So mostly just a question there. And then the other question that our membership has had relates to the language on line 4. And as our members think about it, and as we consider trapping, and I think there's certainly something to be said for the growing multiple use of public land, but trapping is fundamentally a wildlife management tool. And the way this bill reads is that any, you know, use of trap or snare on land other than that of the person's own family, which certainly suggests that the only place that you could do anything would be your own family's land. And there's questions I think that our members have on leased land or ag land, or if you're trapping on a friend's land because they don't necessarily know how to trap, but they need you to come in and do that. So I think there may be some language around, you know, private land or leased land or something like that, rather than saying you can only, you know, without a license, trap on your own family's land. So I don't have any firm solutions on that front, but it was just sort of a question that our members had of like, well, can I now not go onto my neighbor's land and trap without a license, even though that's something that I've been doing for generations? So just a couple of things to consider in the language, but otherwise our comments are limited to that. Happy to answer any questions,
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman.
appreciate that. We were all taking notes as quickly as we could. That, you did great, but I didn't get all of that down. So I hope that we can maybe hone in on what the concerns of our backcountry folks are. You know, we want to get this right for sure. So thank you. Senator Boner.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. That's some of the same thoughts I had. It's, you know, if, it's just speaking from our own experience, we have a contractor that does this sort of work. And so, yeah, I think if, consistent with the testimony I heard, this isn't supposed to be targeted at private property. So I think that may be a good way to avoid the unintended consequences of areas that do not have a lot of public, you know, traveling through it and don't have the issues that we heard about today. So I think there's got to be a way that we can address the concerns that we heard today without these unintended consequences. And I think that's a pretty good way of doing it. And, you know, maybe we can just make it based off of experience, you know, 4 or 5 years worth of experience, and maybe you don't have to take this education course. And so if it's the concerns and experience folks, Mr. Chairman.
Well stated, Senator Boner. And I, while you were presenting a bill elsewhere, Mr. McGagna suggested to us that we have some language to consider. So appreciate it. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for being here. And we'll continue, if this bill goes upstairs, a lot of the process, you know, and we'll keep working the bill with the sponsor. And anyone else in the room want to testify on Senate File 139 and 140? Okay, let's go to, we have some folks online who want to join us this morning. Let's go to those folks. Sue, I think you can maybe let them in 2 at a time, and we'll allow for testimony on both bills. I noticed that several folks have an interest in both, and please feel free to talk to us about either or both of these bills. Is that Lisa on the screen? Is that?
Yes, it is.
Ms. Robertson, good morning, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Good morning, Chairman Landon, members of the committee. There's been some excellent testimony here, and I'll try not to repeat too much. My comment is short. And of course, I do support the bills and the amendments. Oh, hang on a minute.
It's really short.
Sorry about that. You don't want to look at that when we see my face. I'm Lisa Robertson. I'm a 30-year Wyoming resident, and although I was at the Capitol yesterday, I can't attend today's meeting in person. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here to share with you. I just wanted to give you the significance of how long that we've been working on this, just to know that we have done as much as we can over a very slow process to raise awareness and advocate for change. But 12 years ago, two friends, beloved pets, were caught in a trap, and one in a snare, and we had not experienced these steel devices previously. We soon learned that these traumatic experiences could have been prevented. So we dug in to learn about our state trapping regulations and how to create a reasonable expectation of safety on our public trails. We learned that our neighboring states had already implemented statewide setbacks on trails and trapper education. We learned that in Wyoming, traps and snares can be set directly on public trails, not just adjacent, but directly on public trails, and that traps can be left out for 3 days before being checked by the trapper, and 1 week to 13 days for snares and conibears. So basically, anywhere a person can walk their dogs legally, there can be traps and snares currently, except for, of course, national parks and elk refuge and certain designated areas. So safety is even more compromised as our public lands continue to experience a heavy increase in public recreation. But there are solutions to prevent conflict, which we've heard today. No one should suffer the brutal injury or death of their best friend. Well, those first trapping incidents occurred 12 years ago, and although we've made progress regarding educating our public how to stay safe on public trails, our pets are still being injured and killed needlessly. The resistance to change has been challenging, but extensive statewide education, advocacy, and awareness are changing this. We are finding solutions that can work for everyone, and more trappers are finding this to be true. We've done our best, and we hope it will make a difference today. We have focused on these two recommendations for the past 4 years, and we've worked with other folks as well, with our agency, wildlife agencies, with our commission, with stakeholders statewide, and we would respectfully ask that the committee move forward with approval. We would also like to thank Senator Dockstader and Representative Erickson for taking on and sponsoring these two bills as well. Thank you for listening. We are grateful.
Ms. Robertson, thank you very much. Well done. Any questions for the speaker? Okay, let's move on to maybe Ms. Patton. Is that who we have on screen? Okay, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee for letting me speak here today. I have a little story about my own dog being caught in a trap. I live in Sunlight Basin, and if you folks don't know where that is, that's about 45 miles northwest of Cody off of Chief Joseph Highway. And it's right by the highest bridge in Wyoming, which is a pretty big tourist attraction. And right there, there's a large pullout with a public bathroom. And actually, that road is pretty heavily traveled in winter by snowmobilers going up to the Beartooth Highway. And that public bathroom on Forest Service land is, I think, well, there might be one on top of Dead Indian Pass, but it's really one of the few along the highway there. And there's also, it's access to a trail right there that goes down kind of below the bridge. And also that trail goes to a Forest Service plaque. And there was a trapper that was in the winter looking for bobcats, setting a trap, I would say 150 feet, maybe 200 at most, alongside that trail from the bathroom. And since I live there, I frequent that trail. There was a rabbit that was hanging from this tree. It was a large Doug fir. And it was right alongside the trail. My dog couldn't help but investigate, and boom, he got caught in a leg hold trap. Lucky for me, I had practiced, because I live there, I know about traps and snares, and I had practiced. And I just can tell you, so I was able to release my dog, and he's a large golden retriever. He was about 90 pounds, but he's a pretty submissive dog, so he didn't bite me or anything like that. was able to release them, but the trap was really rusty because these trappers just use them over and over again, and it takes a lot of strength. And the other thing about these leg hold traps is they're just not intuitive. Like if you don't know what you're doing, and I had to figure it out on just a regular trap and learn, you can just be stymied how to release them. And as far as snares go, I know that, they have a quick release, but it's kind of a panic mode right there because your dog is choking to death versus a leg hold trap. So usually I tell people, like in the Bighorn Basin, people hike in there and tell them to carry a tool just in case it's a special tool because these are wires that are complicated. That's pretty much it. I really support this bill. In terms of the second bill, I fully support having trapper education. I heard the previous person talk about age limits, but I know people who are 40, 50, 60 years old who are moving. Maybe they just moved here a couple of years ago to the basin and, I want to start trapping because I can. Or particularly trapping coyotes year round. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration. I don't know how you'd word it, but I don't think it's just young people, disregarding setbacks or, not being courteous. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Patton. Appreciate you being here, and that's beautiful country where you live.
Yeah, it certainly is. I love it there.
Be awesome. Thank you for taking the time. Okay, next up, I've got Ms. Zoller. Is that, it looks like Karen, can you hear us? Good morning. Okay, we lost your picture. If you can hear us, unmute and good morning. Welcome.
Hi.
Good morning.
Can you hear me? Hi, my name's Karen Zoller. You can hear me?
We sure can.
Okay, just making sure. So my name's Karen Zoller, and I'm a Wyoming citizen. I live in Pavilion, Wyoming, Fremont County, and I have a dog named Mac. I went out for a run in 2020 on public land, and Mac was brutally killed in a hidden baited power snare on public land. And since that time, we're just trying to bring awareness for public safety on public land with some trapping reform. We've worked with the Game and Fish, as Angie Bruce said, in 2020. We've come together with the trappers and the citizens. The Game and Fish put a whole statewide movement on trap reform. What are the issues? And the first two were mandatory trapping and setbacks for safety. So now it's presented again. And the cool thing is that everyone's on board with this. The Wyoming Trapper Association, the trappers, the citizens. So it was a collaborative effort that really was productive to make it safer. And now we just need the legislature to join in so we can just keep moving on this and create safety on our public lands.
Ms. Zoller, thank you very much for being here this morning. Really appreciate you taking time. Any questions for Ms. Zoller? Okay, thank you so much. Let's move on to Ms. Chapman.
Mr. Chairman, we just have Jamie is next.
Okay, so let's go to Ms. Olson next then. Please unmute and welcome. We saw your name flash up, Ms. Olson. I think all we need is just and I apologize, Jamie. I was thinking you were of the opposite gender, but good morning, Mr. Olson. Welcome. We just need you to unmute if you would.
All right.
Okay,
me now?
we sure can. Good morning,
All
Mr.
right.
Wilson. I apologize for not realizing who you were there, but welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members. Real quick, the young lady in Afton that lost her dog. I'm a full-time predator control trapper. I lost all 3 of my dogs on the same day about a year and a half ago. On the trap line, brucellosis. So my heart really goes out to her. So the 2,000 plus licenses that are issued in the state of Wyoming as a percentage of recreational activities isn't really reflective of the number of trappers, predator control trappers dealing with coyotes, don't need a license, so they're not really part of that group. Most of the trapping that's done in the state is predator control trapping, unlike most eastern states where they're doing predominantly, as it's referred to as recreational trapping. I don't think, I personally agree with the rule, both these bills I agree with. I don't believe the rule for the setback actually goes far enough. And I think there should be a separation between predator control and recreational trapping. I think most of this would resolve quite easily by just simply having some sort of a notification. So when I used to work for Wildlife Services, I spent 7.5 years with Wildlife Services. I've spent the last 19 years of my life doing full-time predator control work. When I've hunted in 8 Western states and coyotes and trapping, 1 in Minnesota. And when I was down in Arizona, when you would go to public land, there was a sign-in book. So when you would pull into that camping area per se, or hiking area, there would be a little station there. It wasn't very fancy. It was just have a covering over it. You'd open up the lid. There'd be a book in there, and you could write in there when you entered and what your activities were on that place. I believe a lot of this would be, the setbacks are fine, but an individual still doesn't know for sure if that particular trailhead actually even has traps on it. And so I think by some sort of, when you pull into a camping area, if there was a board up there that said there is traps present on this trail system, a person could make the decision whether or not they wanted to recreate on that particular area or not. But if they did choose to be there, at least they were well informed ahead of time. I think the setbacks are a great idea, especially for a recreational trapper. There's no reason for them to be in those areas necessarily. But for predator control, sometimes there has to be some exceptions. We're a livestock state. We're not a recreational trapping state. Predominantly, we're a predator control state. But I think with a book there that also has a description of how to, none of these traps would be lethal to the dogs. I believe the trap kill in Afton was through a 330 conibear, which everything about that was illegal. So new laws wouldn't prevent somebody from doing something that's already on the books as being illegal. Also, power snares, the Game and Fish can qualify this, but I don't believe power snares are legal in this state as well. So traps shouldn't be lethal. I've caught myself more times this past year than my Airedale has caught himself, and they're made to be, through the better management practices, they're made to be offset and laminated to prevent injury, so you have the opportunity to release stuff. So I think setbacks are great. I don't think 30 feet is enough. I don't know what that number is. But definitely I think that when you get to a trailhead, to have some sort of a notification there and a brief description of how to remove the equipment, I think that would be that'd be very beneficial. As far as the training is concerned, there's a couple problems there. I'm all for training, but the one that so I don't know if any of you have gone through the training course, but I went through the one on the Game and Fish website, and it's from Wisconsin. And so it's about beaver trapping under ice. It's about fisher trapping. There's nearly a mention of dryland coyote trapping in there. So I'm fine if that is a supplement to any kind of educational opportunities that somebody would have. But just like the outfitter board, for a big game guide, licensing process in the state requires you to have an open book, 50 question regarding state statutes and laws. And I think that'd be way more appropriate. I don't think it's necessary to memorize this information, but you should have a basic knowledge on how to access that information. And you have a phone on you. So, I mean, if you have questions on the law. So I think at least as standing, the training that's involved is completely inappropriate or not helpful necessarily for us in Wyoming. So I'm all for some training. And to add to that mentor thing where you can only do one person a year, I think that is just really antiquated. There is all kinds of seminars and training that's going on in Wyoming for trapping, dryland trapping, predator control trapping, the type of trapping that we do out west, specifically here in Wyoming. And those aren't being recognized as any kind of certification. And they're way more helpful than that videos and question and answer stuff I read through the Game and Fish's website. Like, again, I'm sure that's helpful supplementally. But I think if you know, like if you go to Coyote Days in Lusk, which he has every year, there's 2 days from sunup to sundown of training on dryland trapping, all the tools that we use in this country. And something like that should have the opportunity to be a certification point for these individuals. And the mentorship, I think if a person wants to take 3-4 kids with him to go run around a trap line, most of the stuff that you guys are talking about as far as learning is just classroom stuff. Setting the trap is relatively the easiest part of it. It's knowing where to put that trap. And that comes through discussion, not necessarily just following somebody around. Anyway, I think that's it.
Well, Mr. Olson, lots of great information. Really appreciate it. You've obviously been in the field for a while, and I hope that you will be involved in some manner if this goes forward and we start putting some things in place. Excellent opportunities in those public meetings, you know, to interact and share your knowledge. So I hope you'll do that. Appreciate it, Mr. Olson.
Yes, sir.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, good to see you, Mr. Olson. Sorry I didn't return your call, but yeah, we look forward to making the bill better and appreciate your input as always. So.
Yeah, I've known the Boner family for a long time. So yes, nice to see you too.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Olson. Appreciate it.
Yes, and just I'm in agreement with both these bills, just a little tweaking.
Okay, thank you for that.
All right.
Anybody else, Sue, that is waiting in the wings?
Mr. Chairman, that's everyone online.
That's everyone. Okay, one more time, I want to make sure we've captured everyone in the room who would like to testify on these bills. Is there anyone who would like to come back up? And Mr. Magagna, are we good? We're good. Department, any final thoughts to take us home on these 2 bills? And to the sponsor, if you'd like to come back up and help take us home, that'd be great. Let's go to the department first, and I'll give you the last shot at it, Senator. How about that? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for another opportunity. Just a little bit of perspective. There's around 260 current registered trappers that would be affected by the trapper education mandatory requirement. So giving you perspective on scale. And hearing lots of comments regarding the level of skill a trapper may have today. Do you grandfather them in the date of 2000? You could go a lot of different ways. But the bill seems to be framed after Hunter Ed. Hunter Ed currently is needed if you were born after 1965. So very similar method. If we were to look at those other methods, I think the comments were really relevant. However, administering something different would be rather difficult. Having someone move to the state and starting trapping for the first time, yes, they may be a new trapper in Wyoming, but they may have trapping experience somewhere else. So trying to sort through that and understand, do a background, that would be a lot of extra work for the department. And so I think this bill was structured after Hunter Ed to just make it administratable for us in a simple way.
So, Director, it feels like we could get something started this way. We can always modify later, but just thinking out loud with you. So to the deputy, I guess I'm curious where we could track in public and state lands into this bill. Have you pondered that while we receive testimony? Because I think that's something that I sense the committee would be anxious to maybe do, but I'm not sure where to track that in. So committee,
Mr. Chairman?
when we work this, we want to make sure we know where to do that. Senator Hicks.
Just so I'm tracking with you, are we going to work 139 and then go to 140? Because
Yeah,
I think
yes.
139 is pretty simple.
We're going to.
So if we're going to, because I had a lot of questions on 140.
When it comes time to work them, just for the public and for the committee, we will work them one at a time. For now, we're just wrapping up comments on both.
Okay.
But when it comes time, we'll tackle 139 and then we'll go to 140, okay?
Okay.
So, go
Chairman,
ahead,
if I can
Senator
ask a
Hicks.
number of questions, and it may be for the department and/or the sponsor on this, and this is 140. Specific to 140, and this is the education component. It's my, I believe the department snares wildlife now currently, so I'm thinking of grizzly bears. You typically use leg hold snares on a lot of cases to those. So under the provisions of this bill, it looks like the department would have to go through and possess a certificate of education for your people to snare grizzly bears under the current structure, because it says wildlife in 140. Is that the way you would read it, that your own staff would have to go through this education? So that's one, and let me follow up with that, Mr. Chairman. So the next component, and I think it dovetails into what some of Mr. Olson was saying, we also have a federal agency that does predator control, and they use all of the methodologies here also. And I don't see anything in 140 that would say that those federal agencies that are out there in almost every county working for those boards are exempted from having to go through this this trapper education too. So, Mr. Chairman, that's two questions. Is the department's own staff, if we're under the current structure, because it says wildlife again, snaring grizzly bear is going to have to obtain a certificate of education, basically take the same
Deputy
program.
Smith, do we exempt federal and state folks? Is that your recommendation, or what do you think on Senator Hicks's question?
Mr. Chairman and Senator Hicks, yes, I agree with both questions, or the answer is yes on both questions from the senator, that under the current wording of wildlife, that our own folks would be required to have the education in order to conduct their work on large carnivores and any other species for that matter.
So it probably wouldn't hurt, even if, and I think we'll probably change the language based on your recommendation, fur-bearing and predatory animals. We probably should still exempt. It's a good catch by the senator, I think. Would you agree with that?
Yep. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, or would you like
Yeah,
to go ahead?
absolutely, Mr. Chairman. I think that would be wise. That's a very good catch. I will say that the majority of our staff are older than 24 years of age. But however, that there could be a little bit the younger ones right out of college to be able to address that. And the fact that we do have a lot of temporary staff, college students that assist, that are often younger. So I think that would be wise.
Okay, Senator Hicks, you had
Yeah,
another one, I think.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, and I think this gets to what the director was talking, it's kind of modeled after hunter education, so, but when we go to page 2, and we get down into this, so 9 through 23 talks about these mentor licenses. Why do we have to have why does the mentor, if they possess a trapping certificate of education, why do they then also have to have a hunting license? Because on line 2, page 17, it says, and who possesses a valid hunting license? So now to be a mentor, not only do you have to possess a certificate to be able to mentor, you also have to have a hunting license also, the way I read that. And so maybe that's just a byproduct in the drafting, but I don't understand why that provision's in there also.
Yeah, Mr.
Director?
Chairman, Senator Hicks, we don't have a rationale for why that was put in there
Well,
to provide.
Senator Hicks, you're hunting around and finding some things. That,
Well, Mr.
just
Chairman, I'm
mark
on
that
a
with
roll.
a-
Don't stop me now.
Yeah, I've seen you get on a roll. That's why I'm trying to get to
You're
something
worried
else.
about that, are you, Mr. Chairman?
So,
When another question, and so when we go into on the same bill, and we go up to, on page 2, and we look at so this is the authorization or the issuance of the permit of somebody born after 2000. And what I don't see in here that is this a one-time course? Once you take this, it's a lifetime authorization, or is there renewal? Because then when we get down into the mentorship component, it requires that you have to go through a renewal on an annual basis. So I'm not sure under subsection A on 2, where you actually go through this, you can possess or that you possess or demonstrate you have a certificate of trapping. It doesn't tell me, is that for my entire lifetime? Or is that have to be renewed periodically? Any thoughts on that? Because right now, I don't know what we have to do. But I know if I go for the exemption, I got to do this every year, Mr. Chairman.
so let's go to the department first, but Senator, I'll want to come to you and get your thoughts on what you intended there, and then I think we can work this. But Director, any thoughts about how we would best structure this? I think there's some interest in trying to do this, but we want to set it up properly.
Mr. Chairman, it is our assumption reading this that the actual trapper education requirement certificate, so page 2A would be for life, very similar to a hunter ed certificate. And then the section B, the mentorship, that would be an annual.
All right, just thank you for that clarification, because
Thank you,
it calls
Director.
out one and not the other, Mr. President.
So does that track, Senator Dockstader, with where you kind of intended the bill to go?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And just a quick note on the date there and the age. The suggestion that we put in someone under the age rather than a specific date, then that leaves it more open. I would suggest that too as part of our changes. Under the age of a certain, whatever that age is, get the training.
Are you thinking 10 or 12 or?
Mr. Chairman, I was thinking 12, but the agency can maybe help me with that.
I didn't have any education other than
Over in Sutherland
educating
County.
myself, and I was about 9 when I ran my trap line, so. Director, what do you think on that one?
Mr. Chairman, I think I will fall back to what I think is a success, which is the hunter ed certificate requirement and how that has been enacted over history. So that gives a date, 1965, so it's anyone from that date forward. And that has been a successful model. The proposal by the sponsor seems respectable as well. However, for consistency and keeping it the way it would is in the proposed bill would allow for everyone moving forward to have it. I think that's a little bit different shift in philosophy. So.
Mr. Chairman, that's fine.
So, maybe I'm the only one and we'll see, but it just seems reasonable to me that anyone who traps, if we decide that we'd kind of like to have you stop by and get a certificate, I don't see that as being that onerous, and I actually see that as perhaps being beneficial to the educational environment of that workshop. If we've got some of our older trappers in the building and we've got the young trappers just coming up, I honestly don't see much problem with that, Director. I agree with you. We're used to hunter safety now, and everyone does it. So. Anything else? Senator Hicks, one more.
One more, Mr.
I want to make sure we get these out of here
So,
today, so.
Page 2, line 16 on 140. And so this gets down to, it says, so I'll start at 15, can demonstrate they have obtained a certificate of trapper education unless otherwise exempted. Can somebody explain to me what otherwise exempted would be? Because this provides the exemption for a mentor program. I don't understand what that's saying. What would that other exemptions be?
Does that go to the federal and state employees that we referred to before? Deputy Smith, is that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, this deals with mentorships, and I don't think our state and federal employees
okay.
are in the mentorship program.
Okay, go ahead, Deputy.
Mr. Chairman, thanks. Senator Hicks, I believe the only other exemption is if you are trapping on land, on your own land, in this section, in subsection A. So that would be the otherwise exempted.
Oh, okay.
And I think we can clear that up too, so we don't need that language.
Okay. All right, anything else? Senator Jones?
Mr. Chairman, Director Bruce, I was wondering, that last gentleman suggested something about a notification on trailheads or something. Is that feasible, or could you talk about that? I have a Great Dane Blue Tick Hound mixed dog, and she has an incredible sense of smell. So I feel like this is something, if we knew, that someone's trapping in the area, we could definitely keep her on the trail and on a leash, and maybe that notification, if that's feasible, might help save some other dogs.
Go ahead, Director Bruce.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Senator Jones, for that question. When I talked about those 14 recommendations that stakeholder committee made to our commission, and then a lot of those we have enacted, one of those recommendations was to develop informational signs for our wildlife habitat management areas. So we have on commission property put those signs up, notifying people of the basic information and linking a barcode there to that central website with all the information. So more of a heads up as you're entering those properties that trapping may be occurring on the property.
I would assume, Director, that more of that sort of conversation could be had during public meetings if this goes forward, correct?
Absolutely. There's always additional educational opportunities that we can do. We did a whole list of them initially in 2020, but it's been 5 years and you learn and develop as you go. So I think the chairman's right. If this bill were to pass and we continue down this road, I think there'll be other creative ideas of how to get more of that information out there that we can consider and enact.
Senator Dockstader, take us home, and then I want to
just
have
on that-
time to really work
Yeah.
this bill, so.
Mr. Chairman, on that point, we can handle that in the public meetings, but there is wisdom in that, I think about Ms. Barber where she was taking her dog, take my own dog there. We go up that canyon a lot because the city keeps the road plowed open, although it's closed to traffic. They keep it plowed open to access the city water system, and a lot of people use it. If there was just some notification saying, trapping activities here, I might think twice about using that canyon, but that can be handled at the local level. In summary, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, appreciate your consideration. I find wisdom in every one of these amendments. It may take time to go through this. We're kind of venturing into some different territory here, so it takes time to work it through, and that's why we do this. We bring people to Cheyenne, we put them on the screen as well, and we work with our agency, and we sort it out and find the best route to get this accomplished. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, Senator, they've got a good point guard, to carry the ball up the floor in you, and I appreciate you bringing the bills. We're gonna close testimony, okay, and we're gonna work the bill. Senator, we'll include you along the way. If you have a thought, don't hesitate to jump back up here. We're gonna work these bills. Committee, I've closed public testimony. What's your pleasure on Senate File 139? Moved by Senator Schuler. Discussion. Folks, I'm wondering, where can we insert the public and state land?
I'll make that.
Senator Schuler, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we add on page 2, line 3, after setbacks, we add on public or state lands. And I don't know if there's any other place that we need to add that other than that particular spot, is there? Okay.
Okay, discussion on the amendment. And again, that's line 3 on page 2, establishing specifications for setbacks, inserting on public or state land. Everybody good with that? All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That amendment passes. We're back on the bill. We have a couple of other
Mr. Chairman.
suggestions. Senator Bohr.
Yeah, just a question, and maybe it's clear from the context, but setback from what? Do we have to define that? And maybe that's a question for the department. Are we talking about public trails? Or is that something that's is clear enough in statute, you got enough direction that you can kind of apply some common sense? So just a question for the department.
Director, if we leave that wide open like this, are we okay with that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I think we're okay with that. We can work on defining that in regulation, because as you talked about, roads may have a different setback than trails. So then we can go into detail in regulation with that.
Good question, though. So, committee, we should deal with the two suggested amendments from our department. Changing wildlife to fur bearing.
Let's move those two amendments as
Okay.
presented to the committee.
Thank you. Senator Hicks has moved the amendments that were provided to us from the Game and Fish. Do you have those, Sue, in front of you?
Mr. Chairman, those amendments are for Senate File 140.
Oh, those are 140, aren't they? Thank you. My apologies, so we'll pick that up here in a minute. So anything else on Senate File 139 committee? Senator Hicks.
But this is just while we're in here cleaning up the statutes with the repealer, I would just go up on page 2, line 1 and 2, and it says,
Oh, microphone. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
start
just
over?
as while we're cleaning up the statutes here with the repealer, I think it just makes sense to clean up some of this other archaic language. And so on page 2, line 1 and 2, it says the commission, following consultation with other affected entities, may promulgate rules. I think we just need to strike the language that says following consultation with other affected entities. That's why we have the Administrative Procedures Act. The commission routinely goes through public hearings on that. I think that's archaic language that is not necessary. So we would strike, Mr. Chairman, on page 2, line 1, after commission, following consultation with others, continue the strike on line 2, affected entities. So now it's just going to read, the commission may promulgate rules and regulations establishing specifications, just to clean up.
Okay, so the motion is to strike that language on line 1 and 2, page 2. My only hesitation, Senator, would be in a visit I had with the sponsor of the bill this morning, and that is, I felt like Senator Dockstader, you felt that it was pretty important that the Game and Fish work with county commissions and conservation districts and irrigation districts. And is there any concern about, I would assume that the commission would work with everyone.
Yeah, we would hope, Mr. Chairman, we'd hope so. But our thought was that we make sure we keep the other entities involved too. And do we need to have that in statute to make sure that they do?
Okay, thank you, Senator. And so that's the question. Senator Hicks, any thoughts about that? That's my only hesitation.
Mr. Chairman,
I want to
could
make
we have
sure.
the director come up? Because this is, again, if we're going to go on, then we're going to have to come in and provide a definition of what constitutes an affected entities. Because right now, that's everybody, and I believe the department already does that through their process, and consistent with the Administrative Procedures Act in the state of Wyoming, they're obligated to do that.
Are we good to strike that, Director? What do you think?
Mr. Chairman, I hear Senator Hicks's comment, and I do like the cleanup because I think it's redundant, because we are required through our rule and reg process to do that already.
Okay. So read that one more time, Senator Hicks, if you would, so that we're sure to get it. Sue probably has it, but I want to make sure. Okay?
Mr. Chairman, so page 2, line 1.
Thank you, Director.
After commission, strike the balance of that line. Starting on line 2, strike through affected entities. Just, it's a cleanup.
Do we need a may or a shall?
Well, it'll still be, the existing language remains, so the commission may promulgate rules. That's existing
Okay.
language.
Okay, does everybody understand the amendment? All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That amendment has passed on Senate File 139. Anything else on Senate File 139?
Question.
Anything else? Sue, would you take roll on Senate File 139, please?
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for Senate File 139 as amended. Senator Boner?
Aye.
Senator Hicks?
Aye.
Senator Jones?
Aye.
Senator Schuler?
Aye.
Chairman Landon?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 5 ayes.
Okay, Senate File 139 will go to the Wyoming Senate upstairs and begin the process all the way. So Senator Dockstader, on that one, we're right behind you if a fight breaks out. Okay? Okay, Senate File 140, what's your pleasure on that bill, committee? What is the pleasure on Senate File 140? Do I have a motion on Senate File 140? Okay, Senate File 140 will not be considered for lack of a motion. Okay, let's move on to the next bill. Thank you, everyone, for being here, providing testimony, and thank you, Senator Dockstader.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hicks.
If I may, because I know there's a lot of people came here to testify on Senate File 130, and I think the intent is something that we continue need to move that direction. It's just, for me, it's the structure of the bill. A lot of these questions that were come up, we got a lot of work to do. I'm just mindful that these go into the permanent laws of the state of Wyoming. Given the level of the amendments that the department brought and some of the issues that were raised, I would encourage the department to keep working with all those vested interests, and maybe we can address this. I think it could be a very valuable tool in the toolbox going forward, but I just don't think this bill is ready for prime time. And it's not the issue, Mr. Chairman, it's just the structure of the bill at this point in time.
Well, I appreciate those comments, and Director, I really appreciate you being here this morning. Conceptually, I actually support the idea of better education. I grew up, as I said, as a trapper. I've done this, I know it. And it concerns me, you know, in this day and age, there's a lot of us, and there's more and more of us coming. A lot of human beings, and we're pushing further and further up the foothills and into the timber, and we're walking a lot of places that didn't used to be walked. And so, you know, I think this is something that we may want to consider committee taking up in the next 3 or 4 months during the interim. We could certainly visit with the department about that. So the issue is not gone. We'll just take it up as we move through this year, perhaps, and thanks to the department. Okay, so let's move on. We've got another senator in the room. If he would like to come forward, we've got a bill called Wildlife Conservation License Plates Amendments, sponsored by Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator
Glad to be in front of your committee.
It's nice to
my old
see a couple
seatmate.
of good friends of mine here. That's a good deal, by golly.
So I bring to you today Senate File 149, Wildlife Conservation License Plate Amendments. This is a pretty straightforward bill. We're not doing anything with the plates at all. We're not changing the plates. The only thing that we're doing, this was actually asked as a liaison to the Transportation Commission. One of the commissioners asked me to bring this bill. All this bill does is allow plates to be placed in the counties where you get your license plates. Right now, the process is you apply to the department and wait for the plate, okay? It was thought that if we had a certain number of plates that were placed in all the counties, that people who came in and saw that plate, they say, oh, I want that plate. But then you give them an application and then they go home and then they wait and then they think about the price. and they don't apply. So they were thinking that impulse buying would be great if these plates were available in the counties. Also, it's more convenient as well, unless you want a certain number. And what's going to happen to those is the commission has identified that we will just take some of the higher number plates and distribute them in the counties. So just to go through this bill, the changes basically, if you look at, like on page 2, every place where it says apply to the department, it's also going to say now or to the county. So there's various places where that happens. And then on page 3, you'll see there's a strikeout on line 17, and that's required to be removed since we're not, now they can get them from the county and not from the department. So it's pretty simple, straightforward bill. I would entertain any questions, and I also have Mr. Rossetti here from the department that could explain what I can't explain.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions for the senator? Senator Jones.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I was just wondering, any of the other specialty plates allowed like this? I think it's a good idea, and so I was just wondering if this is going to be the first.
I'll pass that
Senator?
question over to the department.
So, Mr. Rossetti, it's good to see you. How you been? Yeah.
Chairman Landon, Taylor Rossetti, Deputy Director for WYDOT. It's nice to see you in the committee today. Senator Jones, to your question there, this would be one of the first ones. The reason that this statute is structured the way it is it models after most of the other specialty plates. This would really be kind of a first step in this direction, and I do believe Senator Pappas said it well. I think we've heard from folks and folks in the county offices that there is a desire at times for the impulse buy to happen. I think this then paves the way for that to occur. And I do think, just so you guys have an idea, there's been about 3,000 of these sold, which makes it probably the third most popular specialty plate we have behind the vanity plates and the University of Wyoming plates. So it has been a good seller. It's generated on our side of the house about $2 million since its inception into the Wildlife Conservation Fund. This year alone, between plate fees and renewals, we've collected $113,550. And the nice thing here is that there's an awful lot of permissive language in here to allow folks to do additional donations when they get their hunting and fishing licenses, when they get a snowmobile permit, when they get a MPV permit. And this year alone, we've received $92,191 in just donations in addition. So it's proven popular. I think this puts it in the hands of the public faster. I think it's, as some of you folks say, a good little bill.
Mr. Rossetti, thank you. I was just sitting here knowing what I went through to try to re-up on the brown and gold license plate, and sent my money in, and then it was sent back in a couple of weeks saying, nope, you've jumped the gun. We don't have those plates yet. So I started over about a month later, and I'm looking forward one of these days to having a new plate. So that was in December. So, and they might be up home. I don't know. We'll see. But it just makes sense. Great job on this bill, I think, because, if we could streamline, I think it would really help our public. Any questions? Senator Hicks?
Yeah, Senator, maybe you can remind me, or your cohort there with the department, on the $150 that's paid, how much of that actually goes to the Wildlife Crossing Fund, and then how much is retained by the department?
I wouldn't know that number.
Mr. Rossetti, go
Mr.
ahead.
Rossetti, do you?
Mr. Chairman and Senator Hicks, so of the $150 initially and the $50 renewal fee every year, all of that goes to the crossing account. The fee that goes to the highway fund is the fee that is referenced. It's the $30 fee that's
It's the
included, that
normal
initial.
registration.
Yep. Yes, so all of the $150 and the $50 annual fee all goes to the Wildlife Crossing Fund.
And Mr. Chairman, real quick, this will go into the same Wildlife Crossing Fund. We're not creating another fund. Is that correct?
Chairman Landon, Senator Hicks, that is correct.
Thank you.
So initially, they're collecting $180.
Yeah.
To be clear.
Good questions. Okay. Anything else for either one of these gentlemen? Okay, I want to go to public testimony on Senate File 149. Is there anyone here who would like to testify? Director, come on forward. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senators. I'll be really quick, but it was great to hear that this is third most popular plate, and I'd like to see it be the first. So I think this gives that opportunity. Our wildlife across the state greatly benefit from this, and it's really nice to have an opportunity that the constituents of Wyoming can contribute to that wildlife crossing effort. And this makes it even easier to do that. We have worked with our sister agency, WYDOT, to do a lot of promotional materials explaining how to get this plate, and this just simplifies that. And as you previously heard, more likely to get more out there on the landscape. You know, it really shows when you can pull into a parking lot and see several of these plates, how supportive people are on wildlife crossings. We're known across the nation for our wildlife crossing program in the state. We have an extremely comprehensive state plan. And you might have heard in the first round of the Infrastructure Act bill funds that the Federal Highway Administration granted, we got the largest award in the nation with $24 million for a crossing project. So I bring that up because efforts like these are used to match those dollars and really show how supportive the state is.
Yeah, thank you, Director. Anything, Senator Schuler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a really probably silly question, but what the heck? Do we always have the pronghorn on there, or do we change do we put a deer on there occasionally or a moose, or I'm not sure.
Great
Go ahead,
question, Mr. Chairman, Senator Schuler. So the first one originally was a mule deer. This is the new plate. I thought I'd give you the visual effect, so if you don't have one, maybe you'll want to go out and get one. Very sharp looking. This is the second edition. This is the one that's available now.
Senator Jones.
Mr. Chairman, Director, I just had a quick question. I know a lot of people are super concerned about having a lower number. So can they still go through the process to try to keep the number they have, or vice versa?
Director?
Yeah, I'll let my sister agency correct me if I'm wrong, but they can still do the current process with going through WYDOT rather than the county. This just adds another option.
Mr. Rossetti, I
want to make sure I'm correct.
Yeah, we better call up the pro here.
Mr. Chairman, and the director is mostly correct, yes. So very similar to what the counties do on the lower registration numbers. We didn't set aside all of the existing numbers, but we did set aside up to a certain number. So a lot of those really, really low ones, yes, if they apply back through us, we're going to hold those back. We won't release those until January of next year. So we're going to try to follow the way the counties handle that with their plates as well.
So, Mr. Rossetti, you should be able to get your same number back if you re-up your license.
Mr. Chairman, I believe we held back up to 2,000. So there's a few folks above there that will not, but that's just really to do with the logistics of getting them out to the county so they can be distributed there. So the majority of the really low adopters or first adopters will be able to do that.
It's going to be kind of a surprise when my wife ends up with her little car with one of these wildlife plates on there. We may have to have a visit. But anyway, thank you very much, both of you. Anything else, committee?
Mr. Chairman, I'm just thinking with those little cars and those big plates during hunting season, maybe your wife ought to get a hunter orange vest to put on that car. She's driving around state.
I could be in trouble if I did that, but anyway, anyone else like to testify on Senate File 149? Anybody online?
Mr. Chairman, there's no participants online.
Okay, I'm going to close testimony. Committee, what's your pleasure on this bill? Moved by Senator Hicks. Any discussion? Sue, would you take roll on Senate File 149, please?
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for Senate File 149. Senator Boner? Aye. Senator Hicks?
Aye.
Senator Jones?
Aye.
Senator Schuler?
Aye.
Chairman Landon?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that's 5 ayes.
Senate File 149 will head to the floor, and Chairman Pappas, we will be right behind you on this one. That's nice work. And Mr. Rossetti, it's good to see you. Good to see everyone this morning. Thank you all again for being here. Director, Deputy Director, thanks much. We'll see you as we move along through the session here, but have a good morning, everyone.